Good morning and welcome to Rising. It is Monday morning and here we are again. Well.
What a new week. Robby, I'm sorry, I got to tell the people, your scooter was stolen. And
I was not going to make a big deal about it, but I did just tell you that.
I know, I don't want that to happen to you. This is the second time. And I was about to think about getting a scooter. Colin and I actually just talked about it this weekend. Like, should I get a scooter? It will help me move around.
Well, I'd still recommend it, but when I get my replacement scooter, we will now pursue more stronger safety measures. I will have a tracker put on it, and I'm going to look into like some kind of an electrical device that shocks you.
Okay.
If you touch it without my permission. Never again.
Too far. Also, I want to point out that we're matching today. Legitimately matching.
We are. I'll give you that one.
Coming up on Rising, Fed Chair Jerome Powell announced in a video yesterday that the DOJ was investigating him, and he says the motivation is, well, political.
Plus, President Trump is reportedly weighing military action in Iran, but he says the nation now wants to negotiate. Death tolls in the protests against the regime also rising, now at least 544 people.
And former Late Show star David Letterman went off on CBS News and its leadership. But first, Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, by now, everyone has had an opportunity to review the footage of the shooting death of Renee Good, who was killed by an ICE officer while driving toward him in her car in Minneapolis, Minnesota last week. Now, we've seen footage from different angles and at different speeds. We've seen it from different perspectives. Finally, we've been able to see and hear what happened immediately before and after the shooting. New footage emerged on Friday afternoon, and we've not had the opportunity to address it on Rising yet, so let's watch and react.
Change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Whoa! Now, this new footage does clear up some popular misconceptions. It does not appear, for instance, that Good received conflicting instructions from the officers. What it looks and sounds like is that she was following her partner's instructions to flee the scene. That line, "Drive, baby, drive," which was spoken by her wife, is very telling. Now, the new footage does not necessarily answer, however, the only relevant question, which is whether the officer who shot and killed Good, Jonathan Ross, had a reasonable fear for his life. That's the standard. So many in the media are getting this wrong and stating that he shouldn't have fired on Good for trying to flee the scene, which is true. Fleeing the scene on its own is not a satisfactory reason for him to shoot at her. He was entitled to shoot, however, if her vehicle was headed toward him and he thought she was going to mow him down, even if she wasn't planning to do that, and even if getting out of the way was, in hindsight, a better option. So many commentators are becoming emotional about this. It doesn't matter that she said she wasn't mad at him and that he called her a bad name after shooting at her. It doesn't matter whether she was blocking traffic or whether the police were right to detain her in the first place. And it doesn't matter whether Ross was previously dragged by a vehicle, though he was. And in fact, his own political views and hers don't matter at all. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is whether Ross, reasonably fearing for his life, was justified in firing at an oncoming vehicle. Cooler heads, by which I mean experts in the legal system and in law enforcement, they will make that decision by reviewing all the footage. Only a well-trained expert in the use of force can determine, based on what we can see and based on the principles of the presumption of innocence that Officer Ross is afforded, whether he was justified in shooting her. Now, I know everyone on social media, every talking head on cable news, right and left, thinks they're qualified to make that determination. Well, you're not, so calm down. Now, some people hate that issues require nuanced investigation. I know many people on the right want to totally acquit Ross, no questions asked. And I know many people on the left want to bring up charges right now without examining the details. Here was the Bulwark's Tim Miller, casually asserting as fact that Ross murdered Good.
She was like, dude, I'm not mad at you 20 seconds earlier. A 37-year-old lady in a beanie, in a Honda Pilot, with stuffies in the passenger seat. You thought this lady was a crazed murderer? She talked to you. She just talked to you. I will not be gaslight lit by these people, and I will not calm down the rhetoric and tone it down and be like, oh, you got to understand the other perspective. Jonathan Ross murdered her. She talked to him calmly, said, dude, I'm not mad.
Okay, I'm sorry, but all of that, again, is beside the point. Someone can talk with you calmly and in a friendly manner and then still try to run you over in their car. That could be the case. It could also be the case that it was totally unnecessary for Ross to respond that way, but justifiable in the moment because the car was coming at him and he had to make a split-second decision. Or it could be the case that the car wasn't coming at him, that a closer examination of the video footage will reveal that the shooting was totally unjustified, and if so, he should be prosecuted. Spouting off on social media that this is case closed either way, that's wrongful and it's unhelpful. And it's inflaming the public. And I understand the anger. Like liberals, I recoil at having mass law enforcement agencies everywhere doing papers, please style policing of Americans. And I think the Trump administration should consider that these showy displays of extreme force are undermining the entire agenda, the popular parts of Trump's policies. American citizens shouldn't die or face routine deprivation of their rights, and it's ghoulish to suggest, as some have, that she deserved it or that she was a domestic terrorist. The efforts to smear her for having been the victim of the shooting, I think that's shameful and it's wrong. Yet I cannot co-sign mob justice. I cannot say, I've seen enough, prosecute this man, without considering that he may well have been justified under current use of force standards. And if you've developed strong opinions either way, based on short video segments on social media, even though we have all been fooled by these things numerous times, I'm begging you to just calm down and wait.
So I thought your radar and just your perspective from the day that it happened has been really balanced.
Oh, thank you.
And I thought it was fair. I do think that I was let down because it felt like within minutes of me trying to learn the story, just to acquire information from leadership, that the Department of Justice, that the federal investigators, that the president, that Noem, everyone had made up their minds. Mm-hmm. And I know that there were Democrats that were aggressive in their response. We know cursing from the mayor and all the stuff that was happening. Yeah. But I was just so confused about how we had this information without an investigation. And I know that you said a lot of people are on TV pretending to be experts. And so I was trying to rely on, as somebody who tries to bring analysis to television, experts that actually chimed in. So even on Friday, when Amber and I were talking, I read a quote in the New York Times by a guy who works for the University of South Carolina. His name's Jeffrey Alpert, and he's actually an expert, like you referred to, on the use of police force, worked in the industry, in the business. And he told them the way you evaluate this is you look at it, you see what's the imminent threat to life. And from his eyes, he sees there is none. She's leaving. And that's one expert. But then you have a variety of other people that have worked closely in this type of a position before, that have been on a variety of, I'm talking about real world experience, saying like, oh, we would be trained in this situation to distance and cover, meaning step back, move away, let the person go on, get them later, arrest afterwards, not shoot right away. So all of us are not federal investigators, all of us are not experts here, but I think the fact that we're now excusing local officials from being part of this investigation, now that the tensions are already inflamed on both sides of no matter what your perspective is, we're creating suspicion that leads to larger chaos, and local officials feel like they are completely unattached from this investigation. And so how can we expect fairness and transparency when it seems that Trump and his administration, the same people doing the investigation, have already made up their mind? And I think that to me, is the biggest part that's bothering everyone, because you're right. None of us understand exactly what should happen next.
Right. There's too much making up your mind in both directions, I would say. Right. They can't shoot her, as I've said, just for fleeing the scene. They're not supposed to do that. That makes sense, because if you shoot wildly at someone fleeing, you could hit someone else. You could.
And I looked at you. Weren't here the next day. 100% correct. You can't shoot the tire.
Yeah.
You can't shoot the leg.
They don't do any of that.
You can't shoot the ground.
So it just matters if she was coming right at him and he thought in the moment he couldn't get out of the way in time, and that's what he had to do. And I can't tell from the video footage if that's the case or not. I don't believe anyone really can. So we'll need a sober-minded investigation of experts who look at that very closely and figure out whether his determination that he made to shoot instead of try to get out of the way was justified in the moment. And we can't tell. People are like, oh, he's clearly in front of the vehicle. Oh, he's clearly to the side. Oh, it's actually can't tell. And we get misled by video all the time. So let's just wait and see what comes of it.
Well, tensions are on the rise in Iran as protests erupt throughout the country. We'll discuss what to expect next as President Trump is reportedly considering getting the U.S. military involved in the situation. President Trump is weighing options for military action in Iran as the country's government is cracking down on widespread protests. Trump suggested to reporters that Iran is starting to cross a red line, with some human rights groups reporting that hundreds of protesters have been killed in the past couple of weeks.
According to the New York Times, some of the options being considered included strikes on non-military sites in the capital city of Tehran. In a True Social post on Saturday, Trump wrote, "Iran is looking at freedom, perhaps like never before. The USA stands ready to help."
The protests are rooted in economic turmoil as the country faces soaring inflation rates. But as the protests have grown for the reasons, many of them have become more varied. Many of those are now marching in the streets or protesting the Iran's regime as a whole.
Iran's supreme leader has hit back at Trump's threats of military action, even going so far as to blame Trump and the U.S. for the protests. Here to discuss with us is Iranian-born writer Trita Parsi. Trita, thank you for being with us again.
Thank you so much for having me.
What do you make of what's taking place now and the motivations for it? And is there some likelihood that this will result in a shakeup of the Iranian regime?
These protests, without a doubt, have shaken the very foundations of this regime. And I think it's quite clear that they do see it combined with the threats that Trump has made as an existential threat. We have seen the protests slow down significantly in the last 2-3 days, though. And that is most likely as a result of the very, very brutal force and violence that the government has used against the protesters. And of course, I think it should be noted, one thing that really sets these protests aside from previous protests is that there is also a level of violence from certain elements from within the protest movement that we frankly have not seen before. But nevertheless, the fact that it's slowed down does in and of itself not in any way, shape, or form suggest that it's over. These things have a rhythm of their own. They can slow down for a couple of days and then pick up again. And even if the regime manages to clamp down on the protests and there's no more protest on the streets, reality is that the underlying issues that prompted the protests, which, as you pointed out, is partly the economic, but largely, of course, the tremendous anger that exists in society against the government overall because of not just economic malpractice and corruption, but also the societal pressures that they're under. None of those go away automatically, and we've not seen any clear plan from the government to do anything about those things. So I would not say that the slowdown of the protest in and of itself is an indication that this issue really is over.
Now, Iranians rightfully are feeling oppressed and revolting against this regime, but I want to ask you about U.S. intervention. I mean, would it be helpful to have the U.S. involved there? And what do you think all comes attached with us going there and trying to do some sort of regime change?
I think that the likelihood is that this would more likely than not be unhelpful. Take one thing, for instance. The Iranian military, the regular army, which is very separate from the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, have traditionally stayed out of these issues. Even before, when they have been ordered to, position themselves in towns, etc., when protests have been taking place, they have actually refused to do so and said, that's not our issue. Our dealing is only with national security matters. This time around, however, the head of the army has come out and said that they will take part because they see that the country is under threats of, I think, what they call terrorist cells. It's an indication of how these protests are taking place in a context in which there are clear threats from the outside, from Trump, from the Israelis, etc. And as a result, the army, which never done this before, is now saying that they're also going to be taking part of securing the country internally. So I think we already see some clear indications that that type of an external threat has actually consolidated the regime more so than causing splits. That can, of course, change. But given the track record of the U.S. Interventions in the region as a whole, combined with what I just mentioned, I think the likelihood of this actually ending up quite badly is higher than this some way, somehow leading to a very successful revolution and everyone will live happily ever after.
Is there anything we can do, short of direct military intervention to give moral or maybe more than just rhetorical support to a freedom movement, to a movement that wants to oppose or perhaps displace an authoritarian government, without it becoming any of the things you've just said, or we don't want to be involved in matters in the Middle East, particularly. Much of Trump's America First base doesn't either. That would not be constitutional, I would argue. But what can we do that would do some good to in line with principles we would like to support?
Reality, America's options are very limited in this sense, and it's partly because the connectivity with Iran is so low because of years of sanctions and very, very bad relations. I mean, I personally think that if the United States had managed to stay with on a course of improving relations and having more trade, the U.S. would have had far more leverage than it currently has. I mean, the fact that the only option that comes to mind for Trump is to take military action is an indication of how little leverage the United States has. If the United States and Iran actually had more normal economic relations, which would have happened if the JCPOA had continued, the U.S. could have threatened all kinds of other things in order to pressure the Iranian government that would have stayed short of military action, stayed short of the U.S. getting dragged into wars, etc., while also having a higher chance of having an impact, a positive impact. But we have kind of done away with those options because of the course of foreign policy that we've taken. And at the same time, that has also contributed to the absolute misery of the Iranian people that is causing them to go out on the streets and protest because they're just seeing no other ways. So I think in general, when you take a look at what the policy has been thus far, it's a key reason as to why we need to have leverage and why the situation, why it has contributed to the situation being so bad that people feel this level of desperation.
Now, you've been critical of both the Iranian government and you've been critical of the Israeli government. You've been critical of the U.S. response. In about 30 seconds, can you explain to us why, you can be critical of all sides, but then what the next step would be? I mean, do you just want Iran to figure it out for themselves?
I mean, ultimately, the Iranians absolutely have to figure it out for themselves. For there to be a real democracy in Iran, it has to come from the inside. It has to have that type of internal legitimacy. The question is, what is the posture that the outside world, the United States, can take that on the one hand enables that to happen indirectly, and on the other hand does not do things that stands in the way of a more natural, organic process towards democratization driven by Iranians themselves, and at the same time secures U.S. National interest. And I think, again, some sort of a managing relationship between the two countries, economic relations that would enable to have the U.S. for the U.S. to have influence, but at the same time also moving the economic situation forward, which then creates those type of pressures from society in which they do no longer accept the type of political limitations that are put on them, but they're not challenging it out of a point of economic desperation. They're challenging out of the point of economic liberation, in which, because they have that economic capability, they also want to have their political freedoms. This path has been proven much more successful in other cases before. It's just not a path that we have tried with Iran.
Trita Parsi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next, Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has a message for the Trump administration. Don't go anywhere. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says federal prosecutors are investigating him over his testimony last summer about the central bank's renovation of its Washington headquarters.
In a video message on Sunday, Powell said that the Federal Reserve received a grand jury subpoenas from the Justice Department on Friday that threatened a criminal indictment. Let's listen.
The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do.
Spokesperson for Attorney General Pam Bondi said that the Attorney General has instructed her U.S. attorneys to prioritize investigating any abuse of taxpayer dollars.
Meanwhile, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren said in a statement that the president, quote, is abusing the authorities of the Department of Justice like a wannabe dictator, so the Fed serves his interests along with his billionaire friends.
Yeah, so this was breaking news yesterday. I think we're all still processing it. I have yet to form really a strong opinion, and I was looking for reactions from people, presumably in the Trump orbit, defending this or explaining why this is a good idea. I haven't found any yet, so they're still forming their opinions, I think. What I have seen is a lot of concern and criticism of this, obviously from Democrats, but also from Republicans. Senator Tom Tillis said he wouldn't vote to confirm any more appointees, I think, until this matter is dealt with. Look, if there's some actual abuse of the taxpayer dollars, well, he should not be above the law. But I do think the likelihood that this is some kind of pretext because he didn't set interest rates the way Donald Trump wants, the whole renovation of the thing, well, that was set before. That has nothing to do with, and also Trump just renovated the White House, which I don't care about. He put his name on the Kennedy Center. He's doing all, it seems very hypocritical. This is very concerning. The independence of the Fed, I could take it or leave it, but I could take or leave the Fed as an institution, frankly. A lot of my fellow libertarians want it abolished outright, but it should not just be setting interest rates the way the president wants. It's not, there's no rhyme or reason to that.
Right. The economy, you want to think that the Federal Reserve is a political organization, whether you believe that or not. That's
there's
the goal,
no
right?
such thing as an apolitical organization.
I feel like if Jerome Powell is saying we don't budge based on political pressure, and this is like a direct assault on an organization that tries its best to be apolitical and goes off of data, research, and what actually the economy is telling it to do and responding that way, as opposed to
Jan.
political pressure. Isn't that what we want? We don't want, if Biden says these companies,
right.
You don't want anybody getting pressure, because who is President Trump getting pressure from? His donors and possible people saying, if you just drop this.
Well, right, but they have incentives too, to their own institution. Their own institution has political incentives. Those are not, so the idea that it's going to be apolitical is, I think, not.
But I just don't think this is about renovations. I know that President Trump was on speaking to someone from NBC News, and he said he has no idea about this, but he knows that he's really, really bad at building. So there goes the petty jab to let you know, this has nothing to do with me, but I'm going to be petty about it. It probably does have something to do with him, and it's just because Trump said jump and he didn't jump, and so this is retaliation. And I don't think, again, consistently, that's not how we want our government to work, because Trump said so, you didn't do it, now you're being punished.
Yeah, this one makes me very nervous, and we'll have to wait to see what comes of it, but not good.
Coming up, CNN's Jake Tapper pressed DHS Secretary Kristi Noem over the deadly ICE shooting in Minnesota. I'll discuss that and the Trump administration's response to the tragedy next.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Let's talk about it. So, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem went on CNN to defend the actions of ICE agent Jonathan Ross, who shot and killed Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis. Noem insisted the Trump administration is committed to enforcing the law evenly, but the more she talked, the harder that claim was to believe. Noem repeatedly alleged that Good was, quote, breaking the law by impeding and obstructing a law enforcement operation. She went further, accusing Good of having, quote, weaponized her vehicle in what she called a, quote, act of domestic terrorism. Those are extraordinary accusations. They're all Noem's, and they were her immediate response the day of the shooting as well, ones that she's sticking to while the investigations are still ongoing. This moment during the CNN interview exposed the contradiction at the heart of her argument. Take a look.
Those are law enforcement officers being physically attacked. By this standard, would any of those officers be justified in shooting and killing the people causing them physical harm?
Every single situation is going to rely on the situation those officers are on. But they know that when people are putting hands on them, when they are using weapons against them, when they are physically harming them, that they have the authority to arrest those individuals.
She went on.
That's one thing that President Trump has been so focused on, is making sure that when we're out there, we don't pick and choose which situations are and which laws are enforced and which ones aren't.
So I was really trying to understand this word salad. Is Noem, who argues Renee Good was impeding law enforcement, also saying that the January 6 rioters who were caught on tape assaulting officers should have been arrested, but Renee Good deserved to be killed? Because that's what it sounds like when you line it up. And Jake Tapper did just that.
I just showed you video of people attacking law enforcement officers. Undisputed proof, undisputed evidence. And I just said President Trump pardoned all of them. And you said that President Trump is enforcing all the laws equally. It's just not true. There's a different standard for law enforcement officials being attacked if they're being attacked by Trump supporters. We just saw that.
Here was her response.
This individual and these instances and these investigations all have to be taken and done correctly in context of every situation that is happening on the ground.
And that's the point. Context matters, except it seems to matter selectively. According to Politico, even some inside the Trump administration are uneasy with how quickly officials labeled the shooting of Renee Good as domestic terrorism. Vice President J.D. Vance and Donald Trump repeated Noem's talking points, with Vance accusing the media of even lying last week. Politico reported Friday that some close to the administration fear the aggressive response, quote, risks undermining public confidence in the ongoing investigation. One administration official put it plainly, saying, quote, I don't know how we recover from this. They added, quote, this is highly problematic and not a good look and not something our government should be remotely engaged in. Here's where I land. If the party that brands itself as the party of law and order can't maintain consistent standards, the bare minimum would have been to allow the investigation to play out before publicly indicting Renee Good's character. An American citizen is dead, and that was never the stated goal of any immigration policy. Consistency, restraint, and accountability aren't political favors. They're actually the foundation of justice.
Yeah, so I agree with you that there was certainly a rush to judgment to describe her as committing an act of terrorism, a domestic terrorist. I think that was inappropriate from Kristi Noem. Again, because her motivations don't really matter anyway, just as the fact that, in my radar, I talked about how the liberals say, oh, but she was nice to him. Well, that doesn't matter either. But it also doesn't matter that, what her motivate, or that she was obstructing traffic previously. What matters is whether he reasonably feared for his life. And there I would draw a distinction between that law enforcement, Jonathan Ross, and the situation he was in versus the J6 cops. Jake Tapper was trying to make that sound like that was some hypocrisy. What if they had opened fire on the J6 protesters? But the J6 protesters didn't, for the most part, confront the police with deadly force. A car is a dangerous, like you can hit someone in a car and kill them at a very, so that was the argument the officer is going to make is that was a threat to his life in the way that the protester, struggling with the police officer was not a threat to his life. Somebody in riot gear, someone who's armed, they're not armed, you're armed. It would be wrong for them to shoot you. Now, there might be some circumstance where it would be justified, where if they're being, pressed up against a wall or something, there was shoving in a mob,
and video there.
And
things in hand as well.
And it didn't happen. But if some police officer had shot one of those people, and then we would do a use of force authorization discussion, and it might have been permissible for them to do that. So it's not really, that wasn't quite, that didn't land for me.
Well, I thought it did because people did have objects in hand. It doesn't matter what they look at. It look at it as a threat to their life and obstructing justice. That's what essentially they're saying that Renee Good did. But separately, the response is the biggest part of this whole thing, is that there's a lack of consistency. J.D. Vance went in front of the public and said immediately that this officer who killed Renee Good has this immunity that we're talking about. And the immunity that he's referencing usually is in regard to civil trials. And so any police officer, any law enforcement official that does anything that may be reviewed in
qualified
this way,
immunity is what you're talking about.
Exactly. He's saying, he basically is suggesting that as if he has complete and autonomous immunity. There's no laws in our books that say if a police officer egregiously violates the law that they have immunity. This is about civil trials. And so he's trying to convince the public that we shouldn't even be looking into this, when in fact an investigation should and will prevail, and we definitely need to be
qualified immunity. Look, I don't love the idea of qualified immunity, but it does exist. You can't just, like, I would I would be for reforming the system to limit qualified immunity.
And it's
which is
about
the
civil
presumption that
trials.
You can't just
civil trials.
sue the right.
Exactly.
You can't just if you've been mistreated by a government agent, you can't really sue that agent. You have to basically sue the government itself, which is very hard to do. So it's a kind of presumption that the individual agents of the state aren't going to face responsibility for things they've done wrong in a civil context if they've mistreated you. If they've murdered you, they're still going to face criminal.
And it doesn't protect you criminally. And so I think the fact that J.D. Vance kind of was elusive in his statement and made it seem like
I think he even said absolute. There's not absolute.
Yeah, absolutely. He was. That's what I mean. He was very forward. And these are the top leadership officials that are very closely connected to this investigation. And so when people are saying that they're afraid that there's transparency, it doesn't mean that Walz needs to be at the top of the investigation. It doesn't mean that the mayor
Walz
needs to be.
and Jacob Frey have prejudged the case just as much as Noem and J.D. Vance have. Jacob Frey said that it was self-defense was an expletive. There's no way.
I acknowledge that. That's why at the very least both parties need to have independent investigators, not just one side of that argument, right? If not, then just completely release both parties from it and allow an entire independent investigation to review this thing. Because how can you expect?
That's what Tom Homan said should happen.
And Tom Homan also, who is very pro-immigration reform, said we should pause before everybody last week. And it was quoted in The Hill that he was explaining that there should, I don't mind a moment of pause.
He's a professional lawman.
Exactly.
And when something like this happens, you shut up. You let
Why does no one else in the administration know that?
Shut up. Have an investigation so you don't, run your mouth and something you don't know what's going on. We all have gotten duped by little social media videos so many times. Doesn't just stop and let there be a process.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think a little bit of pause and just a regard to know that as many people wanted reform in our immigration policy and system that didn't like Joe Biden, I don't know that a lot of people wanted this, where we're even talking about one American citizen dying.
Certainly we're seeing a lot of videos now of ICE fighting with protesters in ways that I think are unprofessional for those individual officers. And I think that there could be a diminishing support for the agenda of the president with this kind of showy display of faux toughness. It turns me off. I don't know if it turns off people who voted for Trump en masse, but probably some of them. Next up, an SNL alum in hot water after criticizing Jasmine Crockett's Senate campaign. Stay with us.
Comedian and former SNL cast member Bowen Yang apologizing over the weekend alongside his podcast co-host Matt Rogers for comments they made about Jasmine Crockett.
The two were discussing the potential 2028 Democratic presidential field on their podcast, Las Culturistas, and Rogers took a shot at the Texas firebrand. Take a listen.
Anytime a politician is making it too obviously about themselves, I'm already done.
We're out.
Don't waste your money sending to Jasmine Crockett. Do not do it.
I must agree.
Don't do it. You're going to waste your money. Take it from someone who sent Sarah Gideon like a ton of money in Maine. Like, just don't do it. Don't waste your money. Don't do it.
It's hard enough to come by.
A few minutes later, Rogers clarified his position, I guess.
Let me just qualify the Jasmine Crockett thing. She's not going to win a Senate seat in Texas, you guys. Like, if Beto O'Rourke couldn't do it, like, Jasmine Crockett is not going to do it. She is and it's nothing against her. It's just that she is a politician and that she is like, very well defined already. Like, Gavin Newsom is defined.
Yeah.
I believe Jasmine Crockett is defined.
Yep.
Like, I'm just trying to win here, and I really feel differently than we did in 2016. Like, the way to win now is to, like, go with the energy.
He also said that he liked Crockett's opponent, James Tallarico, because he wasn't yet defined. But those comments were met with such significant backlash online, with some fans accusing the two of disrespecting Crockett and also being anti-black.
In response, Rogers posted a statement to his Instagram story writing, "Hey everybody, I heard the response and I am taking every bit of it to heart. I promise. Transparency and candor matter to me, especially on the podcast.
Oh, this is painful to read. Keep going.
I'm a very progressive person who cares deeply about winning these elections. but my phrasing was not.
Ah!
I will be more thoughtful. I really do promise. I have great respect and admiration for Representative Crockett, and I regret that my words suggested otherwise.
No!
I just want us to win, and I'll be better at finding ways to help. And Yang reposted Rogers' statement on his own social media, adding, quote, should not have cursorily weighed in on this, understanding the platform and will use it more responsibly. Unless you go first because you're about to fall out of your seat.
Weak. What is this, 2018? You have to apologize for everything now? I am embarrassed for them that they thought the light pushback they got to a completely reasonable, valid, and correct take that Jasmine Crockett is not going to win in Texas. James Tallarico has a way better shot. Probably neither of them will win, but Jasmine Crockett is way less likely to win. That is a benign and correct evaluation, and if you were offended by that, you're stupid. And I can't believe they felt like they had to apologize, and that it makes me respect them less. So now you should apologize to me, Bowen Yang, and whoever that other guy is, for offending me with your apologize. I demand an apology for your apology. It was weak. It's pathetic. Pathetic.
Okay.
Stop having takes and back down. Don't get out of the take game then.
Get out of the take game.
Yeah.
Look, I think that this apology was silly. It was stupid. I think everything is not about hating black people. This is a reach and extreme. I think this is ridiculous. I think that some people just actually don't like people within the same party because they don't. He used an example during this during this podcast where he said there was a woman, I think Representative Gideon or somebody in the local Maine running in elections, and he was like, I supported her and threw money her way, and that was a fail. Well, that's a white woman, so I don't like. He's just talking about, and maybe he has a women issue. I don't know. I didn't want to dig that deep into the psychology, but I also know there's a real thing that people.
Are you saying that because they're gay?
No, I'm just saying a woman issue. Like maybe he doesn't want a woman in politics, but I'm not gonna make that assumption. That's silly. Also, I think he could just not like Crockett as a candidate. But I also think that what's glaringly obvious is that Crockett is a superstar in her own right, whether you like her or not. Her name is in the mouths of many people. And when you think about the fact that less than 50, in the mouths of many people. And if you think about the fact that less than 50 people generally show out for most Texas elections, Jasmine Crockett went on The View about a week ago and said, that's who I'm targeting. The people who have not been enticed to vote, and I'm gonna get them out. So if half of the state steps up to the plate and votes, plus the people that already like Jasmine Crockett, well, then guess what? She's fine. The opinions of Bowen, Rogers, and Yang, and all these, doesn't matter.
She's not
this
winning
is irrelevant.
The
and
affluent, white, gay, comedian podcast.
Yeah, nobody cares. That's what I'm saying. Nobody cares. And that's not the demographic in Texas anyway. Like, nobody cares about these two opinions. They're allowed to have them. That's the whole point of podcasting and opinions. There's a lot of them out there, overwhelming people. So you can just turn it off and find something else. I also think that people in your party aren't going to like you, and that's okay. People in the party didn't like Mom Donnie. Guess what happened? Still won. So Jasmine Crockett is causing all this good trouble in the name of Congressman John Lewis, the late congressman, and she's causing all this good trouble, and people are getting riled up. And I think that should be a good indication to her to keep going in the same way that Mom Donnie kept it going and won something that we have not seen and didn't expect a year ago. Yeah, that's my speech about that.
I think Princess Jasmine, as I like to call her.
I love that name for her. She is a princess.
Keep at it. She should keep at it, and it'll be a lot of fun to watch. But
she's beating Tallarico in many polls, so I mean, it's not like they're.
She's probably better known than he is.
It was not like their suggested candidate is winning right now. So.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the Democratic primary. She might be the winner of the Democratic primary for sure. I just think she's by far a less likely, less appealing general election candidate in Texas, in a state where it's a Republican state and Republicans generally win there. And I think you want a more moderate candidate.
If our Republican,
you guys want to Carrie Lake yourselves out of this election?
No,
go for
Carrie
it.
Lake is a ridiculous person.
Well, but I'm saying, you know what I mean? The Republican primary electorate in Arizona
is parallel to Carrie Lake. I don't think that there's a parallel. No, that's ridiculous. I'm not accepting that. That's your purview. I think that's a ridiculous thing. I think Carrie Lake is. I think Jasmine Crockett is legitimately fighting for what she believes, and I think Carrie Lake was performing only because I was also an anchor in Phoenix at the same time that she was. And so I didn't know her at all. But the fact going from somebody who understands our industry and reports on both sides of the aisle for decades of her career to go and do this full 180, maybe she had all these feelings bottled up inside. But a lot of times when you're a journalist, you get to understand a lot of what's happening from all perspectives. And so it would make you more of a moderate person. So to be that extreme, it's kind of odd that she went just on the MAGA rampage.
Can we spend another minute on the era of forced apologies really being over? I thought, that's like a wokeness, cancel culture, social media, mob thing from like 2015 to 2022.
But why would you
We're past that now? You don't have to apologize for things.
But why do you even? So I hate that the word woke was co-opted in this silly way. But the fact that if we just accept it for what you're calling it. Why are this
call
woke,
whatever you want.
Why are they woke for apologizing? They just are scared of any pushback. This is just a weak response. This has nothing to do with being woke. It has to do with nobody pressured them to do this. People were like, saying what they wanted to say. Exactly. That's what I mean. I didn't see, when overwhelming pressure happens online, we can all see it. Whether you're on X, TikTok, you're like, oh my gosh, the world is saying this.
Well, social media
thing.
makes it distorts and makes it feel like everyone is mad at you, everyone is screaming at you. When really it's just it's not most people have no idea who you are and haven't heard what the controversy is.
And nobody wants to hear like a neutral, nice, down the middle podcast. I mean, most people want to watch for either passionate. It could be entertainment, it could be sports, it could be politics. Like, give us something to listen to. Give me something.
I also
to
hate this style of because it's so insincere. Like, I'm reflecting on what I said, and I realize now my words caused more harm than they caused goodness, and I'm going to grow and mature as a better person. That wasn't even the most annoying part to me. The most annoying part was when they started to compliment Jasmine Crockett as like this esteemed congresswoman. If you feel that way, you feel that way, but don't do it because somebody made you apologize. Like, say how you feel. You could think that she is accomplished, but also doesn't deserve to win the Senate seat. That's also okay. Just say that with your whole chest and move on. Yeah.
Tell people, no, I still support. Name other black candidates that you might have supported. Did you vote for Obama? All right, so then your point doesn't stand.
I probably voted for
Exactly. So what are we talking about? Let's move on. I think they just didn't like Crockett. Up next, David Letterman goes scorched earth on CBS and its new leadership. We'll be right back after this.
Former Late Show host David Letterman had some harsh words for CBS and its new leadership.
Letterman appeared on his former executive producer's podcast, The Barbara Gaines Show, where he went off on the network and called it a, quote, wreck. Let's listen.
It was that mentality that drove the integrity of CBS News that has been trampled on, pissed on, and eviscerated by these idiots that have taken it over. Yep. And I'm at a point now where it really is hurting my feelings because I'm sick and tired of people saying, oh, wait till those midterms. Kids, we're far downstream of the midterms having any effect on this.
Letterman then lauded ABC's Jimmy Kimmel for bringing people at Disney to their knees last September.
Jimmy Kimmel single-handedly brought the people at Disney and all of those other network television owners to their knees. Jimmy Kimmel single-handedly made them.
Critics
Yes, he did. When the critics show so made them seem and appeared to be the fools they are, and continues to call attention to the plight. And also Seth Meyers, he's very good. And I'm telling you, we're running out of places where you hear these voices.
Letterman said he believes that these comedians' words are not, quote, politically driven. It's driven by the behavior of the person in office.
No one cares.
Can we just stop and talk about that setup for that podcast? It felt very much like a home video I used to shoot when I was young.
That was the most cringe boomer thing I have ever watched.
I don't want to be that mean. I just didn't love the setup.
It's
the wide shot.
Old man yelling at his kitchen table. Everybody has their own podcast now with his former executive producer. Yeah. Every human being, there's 7 billion people on planet
they're showing
Earth,
it again.
And there are about 20 billion podcasts.
It looks like a nice grandma's house conversation.
He's just set no one, like, late night comedy, political commentary is dying as a medium because it is not the way younger people want to receive news, entertainment, and comedy. Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, these other people are sliding into gradual irrelevancy because the medium is moving to something else. That doesn't mean they should be pushed out or forced out by management or by Trump, least of all. I don't agree with that at all. I have defended Jimmy Kimmel's rights against the FCC, which was absolutely wrong, to weigh in some threatening way. That was wrong and should be resisted and should be fought back against. I think we should not confuse that for saying the medium that I know he came up in. That's what Dave Letterman, right, is known for.
Superstar.
I don't think I've ever watched 2 seconds.
I did, and I watched My
show.
Next Guest on Netflix. That's a pretty great show also.
Who's your next guest?
He hosts a show called My Next Guest on Netflix, and he has really great hour-long interviews with people, which I think is still very relevant.
Cool.
Okay, but besides that, his point about CBS, so I have told you guys on the show multiple times that I am a fan of the entire movement of Bari Weiss and what she did, from leaving the New York Times, creating her own entity, understanding the relevancy of creating your own, and then getting millions of dollars from a major news organization to help them be in the running again of top 1 or 2 in the top 3, because they're always lagging behind ABC and NBC. So maybe some new youth and inserted opinions and perspective will help that. So I applauded the move and wanted to watch carefully how it went. I didn't criticize immediately like a lot of other people. But when I watched what happened specifically at CBS News, and I know that he was talking about CBS as an organization, so he's more worried about the comedy portion and probably Stephen Colbert. But for me, I'm looking at the news, and
all that
I salute you, Marco Rubio, happening at the end of the newscast. Not my favorite thing to happen from an objective. I would have left that behind. Canceling the story of the El Salvador detention center.
Delaying.
But we still haven't heard about it. Where is it? It doesn't take that long to get a statement from the president. That's what they're waiting for, or any of his departments. Still haven't gotten that, so waiting for that. And then reportedly, I saw a video over the weekend that it played the entire report, but reportedly it didn't play on TV, the entire report, and it was of somebody breaking down the shooting step by step, who actually was a 25-year-old veteran and federal agent who's done jobs similar to what ICE was doing, breaking down what he had done wrong or what he thought the ICE officer did wrong in that situation. And CBS didn't put any part of that in there, but then they released it online. And a lot of people reshared it on X, and I was like, "Wow, that's interesting that didn't play in the broadcast."
Sometimes you release the full, a more comprehensive.
But under Bari Weiss, we know we have a critical eye now, right? People have a more critical eye. Like, why didn't that make it to?
Yeah, you have time constraints on TV that you don't face online, so you get a more full version of it online. That was true of the Kamala Harris interview. Remember that?
Oh, the breath she took. Yes, I remember that.
That does it for us on Rising Live. Thanks so much for watching, and look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.